want to show you what the spirometer is. Has anybody ever had a spirometry test or a pulmonary function test? Low, 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 low. Okay. This is our spirometer. Okay. Wow. Right. It's about the size of my car key. Compared to the older devices, which are big, bulky boxes, you hand to the. You're basically handing, the older designs. You're handing the patient, a $2,000 thing and say, "Here, don't drop it and spit all over it."
That's right.
But this actually gets plugged into the USB of the computer, and this tube is connected to it. And at the end of the tube. At the end of this tube is what we call a flow tube or a transducer. These are single-use, put in their mouth and breathe through. So we're looking at a $2 item. We don't care if they drop it. So it's kind of nice to preserve the integrity and the lifespan of the product. This has a retail price of about $2,000.
MDPIP price or?
No, sticker price about $2,000. MDPIP price is $1,411. Yeah, $1,411. Okay. And 11 cents.
Right.
About. That's to be plugged in while a person's breathing here?
Yeah, this will be plugged into the computer. This goes in their hand, and they breathe through the. We're going to do a test as well. Time where an MA or a nurse or a doctor actually gets to stand there and scream at the patient. Okay? Coaching is key. So they need to help the patient. Most patients don't get. They just don't understand the effort that's involved in doing this properly. So what we have, I'm going to go ahead and search for Aquaman by entering the first couple digits of the name. You see, I pulled up Aquaman, and it automatically highlights all of the tests in the database. So, but I'm not going to. You see the little heartbeat here off to the side? You guys see that? That's obviously evidence of a resting ECG in their test in their database. But I'm going to do a spirometry test. I am not going to go into calibration. The system comes with a 3-liter syringe. Okay. How big is a regular syringe, right? It's a syringe that's about this big, and about this big around. And what it does, I wish I had a picture, but I don't. I'll try one more place, and I'll give up. What it does is it's a very precise measurement. So what it does is the patient's going to blow through this tube, right? And the idea is for them to fill up their lungs as thoroughly, as much as they possibly can. It is not normal for us to walk around filling our lungs with air. We don't do it. Okay, so it actually takes a little bit of practice on the patient's part and a little bit of coaching on the staff's part to walk them through that. But what calibration does, because it's measuring the amount of air flowing past the sensor inside the flow tube, it has to be calibrated. And calibration is relative to the volume of air that's passing through the tube, and that's also affected by temperature, barometric pressure, humidity. There's environmental factors that could affect that. So industry-wide, everything needs to be calibrated.
How frequently would the machine?
Well, that's a good question. We can program the machine to remind the user to calibrate daily, weekly, monthly, or never. We don't ever recommend never. If you have an office that's doing infrequent spirometry testing, then we may set it for monthly. If they're doing it daily, and there are some doctors that they love it. They do it. It's part of physicals. It's part of their routine, and therefore we recommend they do it every day. Calibration takes about 30 seconds to a minute. So it's not.
Will it change the results if they're not calibrating?
If they're not calibrated, over time it will change the results. And what they should understand is that every single test they produce will say last calibrated on and the date. So it's part of the end result of test. So
for practice,
volume is, and we would program it to do that. And it would remind them if it's been a week, it'll pop up window. The minute you go into spirometry to do a test, it'll say it's been more than a week since you calibrated. Do you want to calibrate now?
The customer in the office when you're in there.
Get there. Gotcha.
That's right.
The user can say no and cancel it, and the system won't ask them again until tomorrow.
is it a manual
Yeah, they actually put the flow tube at the end of the syringe, and there's a big plunger on the syringe, and they push air in and pull it out, and it calculates. If the syringe pushed through 3 liters of air, and the machine calculated 2.9 liters of air, then it's going to modify the math. Okay. Okay, so we've got Aquaman up. I'm going to hit the spirometry at the top of the screen. It comes with nose clips. Some patients can't voluntarily close their nasal passage, and they need help by an external nose clip, which they can use, but 99% of patients have no problem. We explained to the patient that we're going to test their lung function. They're going to need to fill up their lungs with as much air as they possibly can. They pretend you're going underwater for an extended period of time. Take a couple practice breaths, right? Fill up your lungs with air as much as you possibly can, and then put this in your mouth. And you want to blow all that air out as fast and as hard as you possibly can. I'm going to go through a couple sample tests. I'm not going to try terribly hard. The patient demographics. Watch when I hit the spirometry. I'm going to create a new test for Aquaman. I'm going to ignore my calibration. You see on the top, height, race, weight. They're in red because we didn't enter them the first time we created the patient, right? And the reason it's important, and this is in inches, so let's say it's 70 inches. Weight is, we'll say, 135, whatever. Gender, race. Race is critically important. You cannot proceed with the spirometry test without entering race.
Lung capacity?
Lung capacity is different. There's a known variation in lung capacity among different ethnicities. Like Asians and blacks, for example, have approximately 12 to 15% reduced lung capacity. So the math will change.
Wow.
Yeah.
One of those Kenyans kick butt.
So now I've updated my patient information. And then it brings me to this live window. This is your actual testing window. This is where the screen you'll see the loops and everything happen when they're doing the actual testing. But what you guys should know is right up here at the top, this little M&M guy up here says incentive. I turn on the incentive screen. So, but what you see here is this bottom line. This is the predicted line. Based on the patient demographics that you entered, that's the predicted line. So their loop should hit that line somewhere if they're functioning anywhere near normal. Okay? The hose is not driven right now. There's no water flowing, so it's not ready to do a test. The patient demographics is critically important. If they enter it incorrectly, they could affect the patient's ability to actually perform the test. So, for example, if we had, what is her name? Kathy? Okay, so if Kathy was our patient and we entered her appropriate gender, height, age, but put her as 220 pounds instead of 100 pounds, maybe?
Now you're calling me fat.
So if we accidentally entered a 210 instead of a 110 or whatever, I'm skirting the HRP. So if we actually entered her demographics wrong, put her birth date instead of born in 1975, if we put 1995, right, that would predict different performance. So there's a possibility that she, while the water may be dripping, may not even be able to get the water to move out of the hose. It's that specific. The water flow is specific to that one patient. That's why it's so important to enter it. So now I'm going to go ahead and prepare myself to do a test. Patients should be standing if possible. If they're frail or elderly or injured or unstable or for whatever reason they can't stand, they can sit, but they should be advised that they can't bend over while they're doing the test because their diaphragm will compress their lungs and it actually would cheat. Okay, so their lungs need to perform on their own, is what I'm getting at. I always tell the user, don't stand in front of them and don't stand behind them, because something may come out one direction or the other. Okay, so I'm going to hit the record button. It's turning on the sensor. Water should be flowing, which it is. Okay, so they shouldn't be talking with their hands because look at the left side.
You're standing in front of them. You're standing in front of them.
Okay, so if they're talking with their hands with this tube in their hand, then they're being calculated already. So the patient should, I'm going to stop and I'm going to delete. The patient should be in a position where they're ready to record. Where they're ready to record. And this thing should be stable, should be in front of them like this. We don't want them to block the back of it. There's ridges on the top, there's ridges on the bottom, bite on it. I always train the users to get one of these tubes. They cost about $2 a piece. That's the disposable cost for spirometry. I always tell them to get one of these tubes, take a Sharpie, put their name on it, keep it in a Ziploc bag. That way, every time they need to use it, they take it out, shove it in their mouth, show the patient instead of trying to explain to the patient. Because, they sometimes just don't get it. So it's easier, a picture's worth 1,000 words. All right, so I'm the patient. I'm ready to do a test. I'm going to do a couple practice breaths. So I fill up my lungs with air. When my lungs are full, I'm going to do this. And by that time, I've already hit the start button. Hit it? Did I say hit it? Go That's the key. Screen to the patient. Tell them to keep going. So that's what we call a flow volume loop. And what it's telling us, the key is this peak right here. That's the key. Key number 1. Blow it all out as fast as you possibly can. This is an unacceptable effort. And they'll all do it unless you tell them how to do it right. So it's blow, 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 push, 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 keep going. And when you think there's nothing left, keep going, go, 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 go. And then they'll be wheezing the last fractions of a liter out of their lungs. Right? And then they'll collapse. Okay, so that's how we perform a test. And you see the norms. I cheated on purpose because I entered the age, I entered the weight as 135 pounds. I'm more than 135 pounds. I also put the age as 1950 something, and I'm in the 1960s. So I knew that while not trying terribly hard, I knew that I'd overperform. So it made me look good for a second. So that's your patient, your predicted line, and that's their actual performance. This is their exhalation. This is their inhalation. We do it 3 times. There's a message: blow out longer, no plateau. These are helpful tools for the user to understand how they can improve on the next effort. It doesn't mean it's a bad effort. It just means that there are things they can do to help the patient get a better result the next time. Now, it's exhausting, especially for older patients or patients that are not, real strong or stable. It's exhausting. I mean, it's like hyperventilating on purpose. So you can't get too many efforts out of the patient. So you gotta try to prepare the patient early so that they know how to perform. That's why I say take a flow tube, show them how to do it. Not actually turn on the test, but actually show them how to handle the tube. Okay? Does that make sense? We do the American Thoracic Society, which is the lung equivalent of the American Heart Association, requires 3 tests. All doctors know that. 3 tests. You can get away with 2 at a minimum, never 1. Yes?
Does it say all 3, or does it override it?
That's a good question. It saves all of your efforts. The patient could do effort after effort. If they put their tongue in the way during a test, and you get a big bleep in this, you see that it's not a straight loop. If the patient put their tongue in the way, or if they brought up some phlegm, or it came out of their mouth, and there's reasons why the test may not be all that good. So the machine, you can do as many efforts as you want. The system will take the best efforts and ignore the rest, but it will still store them. Okay? And then the only other factor is, let me show you what a test result looks like. The only other factor is, see this little drop down right here? If the doctor determines that the patient has a restriction or an obstruction and they need a nebulizer, anybody ever done a nebulizer? Asthmatics, things like that. That's supposed to improve your lung function. So the doctor will look at this. They'll immediately determine right then and there whether the patient needs a bronchodilator or a nebulizer. They'll do it right then and there. They have to wait, I think, 20 minutes or depending on the medications for it to filter through the lungs. And then they'll bring the patient back and they'll do another test. And that's where they would hit the pre and post.
They get paid twice on it.
So let me show you what it would look like.
So you want to do.
This is what a test would look like if we had printed it out, and it would also look like as you pulled up in the MDs or any. So top left is your patient demographics. Here's your lung age, right? Here's your lung age based on your performance, your actual age right here. Smoking indications that would be entered at the beginning of the test if the patient was a smoker. Testing information, these are the protocols, the time of the test. There's different mathematical protocols that can be used. Quality messages, blowout longer. See it says not met. This is the ATS, the American Thoracic Society. They require 3. I didn't do 3. So it's going to say the criteria was not met, but it's still a good test. Okay? What else can I tell you? All right, so down here this is the math that the doctors are looking at. And I only did a pre-test, and here's my predicted based on my demographics. Here's the best effort. If I did 3 or 4 other efforts, these are the pre-bronchodilator efforts. If I did multiples, you can see the other ones over here for reference. But I took the best effort, compared it to the predicted effort, and gave me a percentage. Out of what it expected, I performed to a capacity of 111%. Okay? Now, if they did a bronchodilator and came back and did the post, where you hit that little drop-down arrow on the other screen, you'd have more columns here. But you'd have the predicted, you'd have the best pre, percent of predicted, then you have the best post, percent of predicted, and the important column is right here, percent of change. So it's not very complex. The doctor eyeballs the change column, and if the change is positive numbers, the bronchodilator worked. If it's negative numbers, it didn't work. Okay? This pre-test, I'm not sure what, from a reimbursement standpoint, I'm not sure how things work in the NDVIP world, but a pre-test is worth about $29. A post-test is worth about $59. So it's worth the $2 investment in the flow tube, is what I'm saying. Okay? And there are, I'm assuming, I shouldn't make assumptions. Workers' comp, those are kind of scenarios where the patient actually wants to fail, right? And so spirometry is a test. It's hard to fail on purpose twice. Does that make sense?
It's hard to fail.
It's hard to fail. If I got injured on the job and I have to go get a physical to determine the level of my injury, I could go, but everybody viewing me knows I did that.
Right.
That's it in a nutshell. We went through functionality, kind of a little bit of the buttons that we pressed to move through the testing procedure. It's the questions that will arise from a user after the installation is complete. Let's say the installation is done, a well channel or a med tech or you or somebody did the installation, they're up and running, and they call you a week or 2 later, and some of the questions that may arise would be, can I reuse flow tubes? No. They're single patient use it for the pre and the post, throw it away. They can't be cleaned, they can't get wet. Things like, what about?
How many of the flow tubes come with a spirometer?
That's a good question. They come with a total of 8 flow tubes. They're intended to be 4 for training and 4 to get them a starter supply. Flow tubes run, they're available in boxes of 25 or boxes of 100.
Do they order them from you?
They order them from John.
From you?
Or we'll discuss.
Yeah,
We'll
right.
discuss that after
Yeah.
Steve, like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I don't even think I need 5 minutes. Does anybody have any questions whatsoever?
Pre-test again?
Pre-test for spirometry?
Yes.
That's for the doctor to determine if there is an obstruction or restriction in their lung function.
And then the post-test would be if he determined that there is, and they would want to do
A nebulizer or a bronchodilator. Well, it's a treatment where they deliver medicine into the lungs. It's a breathing treatment. But they always do that.
And then they do a second read.
They always come back right away.
Okay.
Not the next day, always the same day.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.